taking a peek at the infotainment system inside of the Nissan Frontier. The Frontier does technically have two different screens that are available. There's a smaller 8-inch screen, and then there's this larger screen that you're going to find in the majority of trim levels of the ride. The functionality is pretty much the exact same though. In this video, we're going to dive in. I'm going to show you everything that you need to know. So first thing is that you've got your main screen here with a series of different sub-screens, and you've got the flexibility to customize the menu simply by hitting Customize Menu. So let's do not show again, and then you can just do a drag and drop for any of the available icons, and there are a ton of different options that are available. And you'd be able to customize each of these 3 pages. So you can kind of do a drag here and drop things into the trash if you wanted to get rid of them. But it's nice that you've got the flexibility to customize this and really make it your own. And it's very simple to do. You've got your clock, you've got your split screen flexibilities, and then different CarPlay options and things like that. And then along the bottom, you've got all of your basic icons too. So you've got your phone info, audio settings, and things like that. Menus along the top with your current time along the top there, which you can tap in order to be able to adjust out your current date and time. But we'll go through that one as we dive deeper into our settings menu. But there are so many different things you can do. And actually, why don't we do this? Let's start off on the phone side of things. So as of right now, there are no active devices connected to the vehicle. We're going to start off on the iPhone side of things. So all we're going to do is hit Add New, looking for Bluetooth on our phone there, and waiting for, there we go, Frontier to show up. PIN numbers match up, so we're going to pair. Do you want to allow contacts and favorites to sync up? This is not my car, so I'm definitely saying no to that one. Obviously, if it was yours, you could say yes, but we are now fully connected. And we're connected over Bluetooth, which means that we can make phone calls and listen to audio as well. And one nice thing is that the Frontier has Apple CarPlay capabilities, and it's wireless, but it's also backwards compatible. So if you wanted to use a USB cable, you could, whether that's a USB Type-C or a USB Type-A. You've got the flexibility for both. You just want to make sure that it's a USB cable with the data transfer icon there, because if it's not, there are 2 different types of cables. There's one that's data transfer and charging, and there's one that's strictly charging. So if your CarPlay isn't working over USB, the first step to try is this, but I've also put together a walkthrough video explaining how to fix some common CarPlay issues that you can find in the description. But on the phone here, it's asking, do you want to allow CarPlay with the Frontier? Yes, we want to do that. And a few seconds in, and let's connect. Look at this. Would you like to use CarPlay with this device? Yes, and it's connecting. Boom, look at this. Wireless Apple CarPlay, which is even better. So like I said, it is backwards compatible, but having this available as an option, I think is fantastic. You've got your current time, your connection level, battery level, which map was open last, which audio application was open last, which miscellaneous application was open last, and then you can go to an icon view into this little home screen view instead. And you can swipe across easily to get to these other options. Now, this home screen of CarPlay is kind of customizable. So this is always going to be whatever map application was open last. This one is going to be your general search box. You've also got your audio. And then if you had a calendar notification coming up today, you'd be able to see your notifications there. If there wasn't a calendar notification coming up that hasn't passed, this just wouldn't be here, and the search and the media would be stretched across the top instead. You've got the option for Apple Maps, Google Maps, and Waze. And they're all really easy to use. You can search for addresses, look for point of interest icons. Waze, hands down though, is my favorite map application to use. Big reason why is because as you're traveling, if people have noticed that there are cops pulling people over, if there's construction, things like that, people are really good at marking these things off to give you a heads up. And you can mark things off. So if you notice a speed trap, if you want to mark off hazards and things like that, you've got that flexibility. Well, one downside is that CarPlay still doesn't have the option of using video playback right through the screen. So that's not available. You can use VLC for audio if you want to. Hoopla is a library app. You can listen to podcasts and so many other options inside of this screen as well. And you can also customize. So under your settings here, you can go to wallpaper. If you wanted to customize the wallpaper layout, you can change the appearance to dark, whatever the case may be. If you were back home, you could then jump back into CarPlay along the bottom left-hand side. And if you were to do a push and hold on the voice command prompt on the steering wheel, that's going to launch into your Siri assistant. So a light button push is going to be the factory assistant. But if you do a longer push and hold, that's going to be your built-in car assistant instead. Then you've got the flexibility to be able to adjust these icons out. On your phone, you're going to go into your settings, general, and then CarPlay. You're going to find your vehicle. You can forget it, customize, or toggle CarPlay off. We want to customize, and you're just going to grab the hamburger icon in order to drag out the apps that you'd like to the desired position. Anything with a minus next to it, you can remove it from the screen. So we look there, we've removed them, but it saves it along the bottom of the phone. So if you want to, you can add them back in. But if you've organized your layout for the icons and you're not a fan of what you've done, along the top right side of the phone, you can see that there's a reset option. You're going to reset, and that'll just bring you back to the factory default screen there instead. So it's relatively straightforward using this. You can hop back to the home screen. If you go into connections, we're connected over CarPlay. You can simply disconnect that way. So it's going to stop Apple CarPlay and reconnect us over Bluetooth instead. So if you didn't want to go through CarPlay, you just wanted to make phone calls, listen to audio, you'd have the flexibility to be able to do it. You can hit info icon there in order to be able to look at your device information or hop back into smartphone projection again. That's how you set up Apple devices inside of the Frontier. Setting up Android devices is the exact same process. So if you weren't on this screen, you'd go into connections again, and you're just going to go add new. And then on your phone, we're just waiting for that vehicle to show up again. So we're just waiting for My Frontier. There we go. My Frontier is showing up. So you're just going to click, and we're giving it a second to connect. PIN numbers match up, so you're going to hit OK there. And Android Auto. But before we get to that, so it's asking, do I want to allow access to my messages and my contacts? And this is not my vehicle, so I'm saying no to that one. And you've also got wireless Android Auto available as an option here too. So if yours doesn't have wireless, you can hook up over USB instead. Again, making sure that you've got one with the data transfer icon. And Android Auto should be launching in a second. And look at that, 3, 2, 1, we are fully connected to Android Auto. Launches into the split screen, very similar setup to Apple CarPlay. So you've got your current time, battery, connection levels, your map, and a few other options. You can hit there in order to be able to get to your assistant if you want to. You can do a long button push and hold in order to get to your assistant that way as well. So you've got that available. You can hit the little icon view here in order to get to this little split screen back here. You can hit the Google Maps icon there, and that's going to bring you into this full screen, and it's pinch to zoom capabilities. So it's not pinch to zoom on Apple CarPlay, but it is on Android Auto. You can search for addresses, you can look at different satellite views, edit route options. So if you wanted to avoid highways, toll roads, ferries, things like that, you'd have that flexibility. And then you can hop into the icon view as well. And I do have Waze installed on this phone. But if you've got Waze installed on your Android and it's not working or showing up properly, check down in the description of this video for a little walkthrough on how you can add that one in. But, I mean, it's straightforward here. You've got Waze, you've got so many things. Hopping back home into your connections, you've got both phones, so you'd be able to disconnect there as well. Back on the home screen, you can hop back into Android Auto that way. And then on your phone, you'd also have the flexibility of being able to customize these icons. So on your phone, all you're going to do is search for Android Auto, go into your Android Auto settings, and there are a bunch of options, but we're looking for Customize Launcher. And then all you're going to do is just grab the little hamburger icon and drag things around to the order that you'd like them in. Anything with a check mark next to it, you can get rid of, or you can add things back in. But it's not dynamic the same way it was on the iPhone side, so it's not going to just update. You have to hop back home, go to your connections. You're going to disconnect from, there we go, Android Auto, reconnect to Android Auto, and it'll take a second there, launching us back in, and the changes that we made have now come into effect. So it's that simple doing it. If you were to hop back home again, go back into your connections, you can either be hooked up to Android Auto or Apple CarPlay, not both, but you can do a mix and match. So let's say if you wanted to be connected to the one phone for phone calls, and then another phone for media, you can do that. So you can either be hooked up to Android Auto or Apple CarPlay, not both, but you could do a mix and match here. So if you wanted to be hooked up to the one phone for phone calls and for audio, you could do that, or you can do a mix and match this way instead. And then if you were to hit the little info icon, you could then delete phones if you wanted to, delete and yes. So the iPhone's been deleted, and it's the same thing on the Android side of things. Just a second, info, delete and yes. And both phones have now been deleted. And it's that easy setting up Android and iPhone devices inside of the Frontier. And back home from there. You've got a little bit of information available here too, so specifically SiriusXM, but then there's some other info like system where you can do software updates, map updates, and things like that. So you could update by USB device if you're connected to a Wi-Fi network at home, etc. You can see your current version and software number. And then you've got your GPS information. So if you're off-roading and you get stuck, you need to call it tow, you can give them your exact latitude and longitude as well. There's a series of different audio settings. You've got AM, FM, SiriusXM, USB audio is available here too. So if you had a USB stick with MP3s, you could listen to audio that way. And as you hop into your audio, you've now got a bunch of different audio sources down along the bottom. So those are dynamic. Hopping back into audio, you can change out the sources here. So if you wanted to listen to AM, FM, or SiriusXM, you could. All of your presets along the bottom are a mix, but you can see there, you've got a series of open pages, but you can also overwrite. So what you're going to do is tune to whatever station you want to. You're just going to then push and hold, and that's going to overwrite the stations. You can look at your FM menu there. You can do a general scan, look at radio text if it was available, manage your presets. So if you wanted to delete certain presets out, you'd have the flexibility to do it. So if there are presets that you just don't want to listen to, you can get rid of them that way. And then if you wanted to, you could hop in any of the available stations this way. You can also do a voice command prompt. Tune to 97.7 FM. And you can see there it's tuning out. So you can use your voice in order to change stations and then just button press in order to be able to overwrite. Back into FM menu, just get your basics there. When you're in SiriusXM, that gives you a few more options as well. So you've got your related options. So if you're listening to a song and you're a fan of the actual artist, you can see what's related. You've got a SiriusXM menu as well. You can block explicit content. There are notifications too, where you can manage your notifications. There's listener history on top of that. You can hit the notify icon here in order to be notified of the artist or the song. So if you're a big fan of Jaquan and Tipsy, or just Jaquan in general, you could do notify and then on. And then if Jaquan plays on any station, you'll get a notification letting you know that that artist is now playing. It's pretty straightforward. Hopping back into source, you've got USB. If you were connected to Android Auto, Apple CarPlay, etc., you could then select those as additional sources. But that's using audio inside of the ride. You've got maps as well, and maps, factory navigation built in, which is very useful. You saw earlier, you do have the flexibility of connecting over Android or iPhone if you wanted to go that route instead. You can drag across this way, hitting back to circle in on yourself. You can search for point of interest icons as well. So you can search by latitude first, longitude second. You can start typing in for point of interest icons. So if you wanted to, you could search that way. So we've gone to a local Tim Hortons. You can start, you can add to a route, look at more routes, and then there are additional options where you can save the location or save the route. Just going to hit start there.
Follow the road for 100 meters.
When you've got the active route going, inside of the cluster screen, you can also move in between. So there are a series of different pages, but you'd have one for turn-by-turn directions. So there's no head-up display inside of the ride, but being able to get some turn-by-turn directions right in the cluster is also fairly useful as well. You can hit this to call Nissan services, hit this icon to save it, look at point of interest icons, look at some additional map settings. So if you wanted to do split views, left side information, you can look at map icons. So do you want to show all of these different point of interest icons, yay or nay? Some other options, you can change out your map orientation, map color, the text size. So if you wanted it small or large for the text size, you can do that. And then your tracking dots, yay or nay. The tracking dots are actually kind of neat. And the reason why is because if you're going off-road, anywhere that you've traveled, think Hansel and Gretel. So there will be little breadcrumbs along the places that you've gone to. And big benefit there is that if you get lost, you can then backtrack where you've currently gone to. It's actually pretty useful. You can then do a cancel route if you want to. If you were back home, hopping into your map again with your app going, and then you can hit map full screen if you'd like to. You can change up your headings this way instead. And then you can also zoom in or out this way. You can do a pinch to zoom instead if you'd like to. You can fine tune it that way. Hit back, and you've got your current destination along the very bottom there. If you hop back into that split map, you then get a few options. You can cancel the route, look at your route, look at the end destination as well. I'm gonna just cancel and cancel. Then you could search for other addresses again, so whether that's point of interest icons, GPS coordinates, and things like that. You can hop back into your home menu again from there. Connections is going to bring you into your connection tab. You've got your Wi-Fi with a vehicle hotspot available. You do need a data-only plan in order for this to work, but you could use the vehicle as a hotspot if you wanted to, and then USB info if you had a USB stick connected. And I think that's the basics there. So we're going to dive into some additional settings. So you can jump into your connections that way. It's the same idea. Navigation is going to give you some different navigation settings. So you can adjust things on your map, which we've already seen. Dual map is essentially going to give you a little split map instead. I'm a bigger fan of, like, even the 3D look is kind of neat, but you can change out the map if you'd like to that way. So it's a matter of preference. Do you want to be in the 2D versus 3D map view? There's some different guidance settings for your volume. So as you come up to turns, do you want to get notifications, yay or nay? Do you want the car to tell you when you've got an upcoming turn? Do you want to get a traffic announcement? So for red light cameras, things like that. And then if there's an upcoming toll booth. Route type, do you want the fastest, the most eco-friendly, or the shortest distance? Other routing options, so did you want to minimize toll roads, things like that? So if you wanted to avoid toll roads, HOV lanes, things like that, you've got that flexibility. With your estimated time, do you want it to be for your end destination or a waypoint in between? You can customize the route if you'd like to. So do you want to get the fastest route only, or do you want to get all three options instead? See, traffic info, nothing exciting there. Safety information, if you want to get speed limit warnings and things like that in your cluster screen or on your map, you could. I'm not a fan of that personally. There's an address book. So you can delete all of your saved items. So if you've saved previous addresses to the vehicle, you can delete them. Same thing, you can delete all of your previous destinations and reset everything back to the default instead. There are a series of sound settings where you can adjust your bass, treble, and a few other things. Something like this is definitely not the way to go. So your treble, if everything is kind of centered out, your bass up a few points with your treble down a few is going to give you pretty good audio. And then you can adjust the balance. So do you want it to be left or right focused, rear or front focused there instead? So if you wanted it focused on people in the first row, you've got the flexibility to do it. Into volumes and beeps. So there's no beeping right now, but if you wanted to, you can add in a little button beep. There's guidance voice, let's see, your ringtone, your audio volumes and things like that. What do you want it set to? If you adjust it that way, it'll automatically adjust that out as well. You can customize your menu. So you can customize the home menu. What do you want showing up there, which we've already seen, but you can also customize your audio sources. So all of the buttons along the bottom here. So if you wanted to have preference for AM over this way or FM over that way, if you listen to your USB type A instead of type C, you could kind of adjust these out and you can customize the layout however you'd like to there. And then there's also your split screen. So when you've got your split screen, what do you want showing up inside of that split screen? And there are so many different options that are available. So that one's going to be a matter of preference. From here, there's some Nissan Connect services. There's a system voice, and that's the voice command prompt that you hit there. So you've got your voice command prompt. Whether or not certain things show up or not is going to be a matter of preference. That initial prompt, so when you first get to go to hit the voice command prompt, you want that initial notification. And then yes, we want shorter prompts because, watch this, tune to 97.7 FM. It just launches into the assistant and it just does it. So that's one thing that I absolutely recommend that you turn on, is that under your system voice, turn off the initial prompt, turn on the voice prompt. You could then select whether it's a male or female voice and how fast or slow that voice speaks back to you. There are some other settings, so your display as well. If you wanted to, you could toggle the display off. You're just going to push the button down there in order to resume. You can adjust the brightness, the contrast levels, the black levels. You can change out the language. So do you want to be in either English, French, or Spanish? You can also change out your measurement units. So do you want your measurement units to be in kilometers or miles? And that's not going to change out much because you've got traditional gauges right inside of the cluster screen there as well. But you can adjust out your unit gauges specifically for navigation. And then also, do you want to be in Celsius or Fahrenheit, which is going to change up the units on your climate. You can return everything back to a factory default screen instead. There are some system updates available where you can update your maps and things like that. And then just basic apps. So there's a lot of basic information there. And then down the screen, there are a few other options. So you've got your 4-way blinkers, volume rocker. You could push in order to mute your audio as well. So button push to turn it back on, off, etc. You could hot button press to get into your audio sources this way instead. Home button press to get back to the home screen and then jump between your different pages. You can button press to get to your map. You can change between songs or stations this way. You can pull up your camera as well. One thing that I would like to see, it's definitely an upgraded camera. The quality of that camera is not really the greatest, but you've got your little 360 view with a side camera mounted view. You could push this in order to change between either a day or a night mode. And when you do that, you can also adjust the brightness along the very top if you wanted to. You could also do a longer button push and hold there, and that's going to bring you into this screen instead. And that's going to turn the screen off, button push, in order to bring it back on again. And then there's a basic back button there. You can also scroll to different stations this way instead if you want to. So straightforward. And then moving down, you've got a series of other options here. So you've got the auto start stop button, and that's the one that's potentially going to kill power to the engine if you stop for an extended period of time. This is the 4-wheel drive version, so the 4x4. So you can switch between either 2 high, 4 high, and then to switch to 4 low, what you have to do, so you push in and twist, but you have to also be in neutral in order for the change to happen. So you have to switch yourself into neutral in order to jump into 4 low. When you're in that 4 low setting, you then also have the flexibility of turning on your electronic locking rear differential. And there are a series of other useful buttons along the side there. And then switching out of 4 low, all you're going to do, push, rotate to get back into 4 high, or your 2-wheel drive instead. You're going to be in 2-wheel drive the majority of the time. 4 high is for slippery, snowy conditions, and then 4 low, if you're going rock crawling, off-roading, if you're pulling a boat out of water, things like that, that's where you're going to be in 4 low. There's dual zone climate control, all of your basic mode settings. There's a 12-volt power point. Also, heated first row seats, heated steering wheel. The beeping that you get as you back up, so you can toggle that off. You've got 2 USB power points, and then your passenger side heated seat as well. There's also a wireless charge pad down the center stack on top of that. And you can see that the phone is actively charging. If the screen has ever given you problems, like things aren't working properly, it's not connecting to Android Auto, Apple CarPlay, your maps aren't working, audio's not working, you can also easily do a reboot on the screen. All you're going to do, a long button push and hold on that power button. So you're going to hold in for about 10 seconds or so. There we go. And you can see there, the screen is turned off, and in a few seconds, it's just going to cycle back through again. So if your phone's not connecting properly, if Android Auto, Apple CarPlay aren't working, you could do a full factory reset if you wanted to, but honestly, your best bet is just to do a soft reboot by pushing and holding that button for about 10 seconds or so. That should clear out any problems that you are having. Doing a factory reset would definitely be the last thing that you want to do. So I know that that is a lot of information, but that's everything that you need to know about the infotainment system inside of the Nissan Frontier.